Hi guys, welcome to the One Small Change podcast. On today's show, we have Daniel Hyman. Dan is a male fashion and fitness model, founder of the fitness platform EatLookFeel, and has probably the most impressive physique I've ever seen. In the fashion world, Dan has modeled for Versace, Moschino, Calvin Klein, to name just a few. And in the fitness world, he's graced the covers of Men's Health and modeled for massive brands like Adidas. And after being in the modeling game for around 6 years, Dan went back to studying. He gained professional qualifications in personal training, in nutrition, really put his head in the books to make sure that when he came out with his incredible coaching platform, which is called EatLookFeel, he actually had the backing and the knowledge to really provide a unique offering to his clients. He supports his clients through nutrition, exercise, and mindset needs. And it's been an incredible success so far. And actually, the way I found out about Dan was through one of our previous guests, Mr. Will Goodge, who I know is very conscious about who he works with and the evidence behind what he does in his training regime. So that is what brought me into Dan and really saw the incredible work that he's doing. So we're going to take a really deep dive today into these three pillars: nutrition, exercise, and mindset, all really important concepts on the podcast in most of our episodes, but today we're going to go really deep into it and hopefully pull out some key takeaways for you guys, our lovely listeners. So Dan, how are you doing?
Thank you so much. I appreciate the intro.
No worries, it's great to have you on. So I want to start the talk. I want to start the talk by delving into your I always like to start from the beginning, start from your origin of your professional career. So how did you started with modeling? How did you get into modeling? How were you scouted? What was the whole story there?
So actually it's quite a funny one. I was I basically was at uni before I started modeling. I was down in Bournemouth, moved to London. I studied marketing at university, and then I moved to London for a marketing consultancy. I was working there for about a year. It was actually when I was walking home from work one day outside Oxford Circus. I got stopped by one of the scouts who I'm actually still with now at Nevs. And she basically stopped me, said to me, "Oh, have you ever thought about modelling?" I completely just laughed. I'd never even considered it. Like, it's not even a thing. And basically completely ignored it. Got the sort of like a little sort of business card, if you like, they give you. Left, didn't follow up on it. About 6 months later, I got stopped again, same place outside Oxford Circus. And then spoke to a few people, decided that potentially, I was on sort of entry level money at the time, living in London with my mates. So it was very much living on the breadline. I thought, right, I could earn a bit of extra cash here at weekends or whatever. So give it a go. And then actually went back to Nevs, and from there got signed that day. And that's kind of tried doing both for 6 months. Impossible. Try and have a full-time job and model. It just doesn't work. So then basically, about 6 months in, actually down to the support of sort of my friends and my parents, said, "You've got to give this a go." And it kind of started from there, really. I did a men's fashion week in Milan. And it went quite well, and then from there I've been modeling ever since.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned just a few massive brands there, but you seem to have modeled for most of the big brands, right?
I've been very lucky.
Have you? Was it an instant success, I guess, is where I'm trying to go to, or is it something that's sort of grown with time as your face has become more known within the profession?
A bit of both, to be honest. Like I had a really, really good start. I went to Milan and did Fashion Week and walked, I think it was 10 shows for some incredible brands and to be honest, I was out of my depth back then. Like just looking back on it, I was out there going to these castings for, like Calvin Klein, for Dolce, for Versace, for Moschino, for D Squared. And just, I didn't really know what they were. I didn't really know too much about fashion. And you kind of realise the importance of it, but it's only sort of as you then spend a bit of time in the industry that you realise, wow, actually, you know what, these are the top players in the game. And I'm very lucky to sort of have worked with the sort of big brands that I have.
I guess in some ways it probably helped not knowing how big they were with regards to nerves and that sort of thing going in. Did you struggle with anxiety going into these sort of quite high pressure environments, or have you just always been quite a confident chap with these sort of things?
And that's exactly it. It's almost like I almost feel like if I was to go to cast now for Calvin Klein, it would be a different story. But I was just so sort of naive to it and fresh out of the box, if you like. It was just, oh yeah, like I've heard of Calvin Klein, yeah, I wear their undies, like let's go meet them. And I didn't really know what castings looked like. I'd never really done castings before. I was just like in Milan, kind of like getting sent round to 10 castings a day and just so far out of my depth, like I said, just turning up, sort of being myself.
Yeah.
And maybe, I don't know, maybe that worked in my favour. Maybe I didn't overthink it. I didn't sort of put pressure on myself. I just kind of turned up and thought, well, let's sort of see what happens.
Absolutely. And was fitness already a big part of your life at that stage? Were you already in that sort of model condition, I guess?
Not at all, to be honest. No, I've always been slim. So I've always been sort of like a skinnier rather than bigger guy. But it wasn't. I'd always sort of dabbled with the gym, as you do when you sort of like at university and stuff. But I didn't sort of take fitness seriously. I didn't have any sort of routine. I didn't know anything about nutrition. I didn't know anything about training. I kind of, to be honest, it really evolved when I became a model, and I quickly sort of understood that to be the best model that I can possibly be, I needed to start looking after myself a bit more. In terms of creating, like a physique that clients want to work with, looking after my skin, looking after my hair, that sort of thing. And that was where sort of, if you like, my sort of passion in fitness and nutrition started.
Brilliant. And I mean, let's go from that into EatLookFeel. What led to you creating it? Why don't you tell the guys what the concept is behind it, and then we can delve in a bit deeper into the little bits.
Yeah, for sure. So that is kind of where it started. It was a sort of culmination of, I quickly realised as a model that to be the best model that I could, and to sort of open myself up to doing underwear shoots and doing catwalk and doing all of the different pillars to sort of be the best that you can, I needed to start taking care of myself a bit more. And the thing with the modelling is that you don't really get too much sort of time and notice for jobs. So it's all very last minute. So you kind of have to stay ready. So for me, it was a lot about building a lifestyle that I could sort of sit at. It's all very well being able to sort of do a 6-week transformation, but you don't get 6 weeks. You don't get told 6 weeks prior that you've got an underwear job. Like you get confirmed on a Tuesday and you're turning up on a Wednesday to do that job. And so it was actually about, for me, right, how am I going to create a lifestyle where I can get to where I want to be, and more importantly, stay where I want to be and live there healthily. And then that led on to sort of, I mean, I'm sure we'll dive a little bit deeper, but that led on to me doing my personal training qualification. And then I did a nutrition diploma. And always, to be honest, then kind of like the ideas from EatLookFeel started to born. And there with EatLookFeel, essentially now it's an online platform where we essentially try and align everybody's nutrition, training and mindset all towards where they want to go. And with the idea that we take control of that for them, so then therefore they can go and thrive in all of the other areas of their lives that are important.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to pick up on one point that you said there, which is, I imagine that there is, but you can give better insight. Is there quite a lot of sort of pathological fitness efforts within the modeling industry, or within your clients that you see in general, with regards to how they get into the shape? Because there's lots of ways to get into good shape, right? I mean, you can take steroids, for example. You can completely dehydrate your body. There's lots of different hacks, I guess, which I have no interest in whatsoever. And I think that's where you're coming from. But is that something that you were exposed to? Did you ever do stuff that obviously legally, but stuff that maybe you wouldn't do now, back in the early days, like anything from that sort of angle?
I've never dabbled with anything sort of too within the game. There's obviously side effects to all of these things, right? And within the modeling industry, it's not just about your aesthetic, although kind of it looks like that from the outside. Like I personally believe your skin is just as important in the modeling sort of game as your physique. So it's taking into account everything. And there are sort of ways in which you can beat the gun, if you like, and make things happen quicker or potentially slower. But like you said, one, you've got the side effects then to deal with, and two as well, it's if you don't do it with education, then there's an end point to it. And I talk a lot with my clients about sort of how we're building a lifestyle instead of a diet, because a diet has an end point. And it's all very well going on a strict diet where you are, consuming what you're consuming for 8 weeks, and then you get to the end of that 8 weeks and there's no sustainability there. So where do you go from there?
Yeah.
Whereas what we try and do at EatLookFeel is create a lifestyle. So we build in, we work around social events. We work around, the education there. So in 8 weeks' time, you get to where you want to be, and then you have the education yourself to stay there, because it's a lifestyle and it's incorporating those healthy habits and eating the foods that you enjoy, so you can stay there for complete sustainability.
You must be sitting around, less than 5% body fat, I would imagine, and looking at the shape of your Instagram. And you mentioned there a maintenance is not a diet, it's a lifestyle, keeping that level. I mean, I've tried to cut in the past and try and reduce body fat percentage, and it's hard, man. I mean, you get hungry, tired, cranky, hangry, whatever. What's your overall strategy? I mean, if you had to put it into a couple of sentences, what's your philosophy around healthy food management?
I mean, obviously it's, I could go on all day, but it's to be honest, the main way I like to sort of go about things is balance. Like I eat a sort of very balanced in terms of macronutrient diet. So protein, fats, carbs. I do consume alcohol. I'm aware it's not sort of optimal for me.
I'm glad to hear that.
it ticks other boxes, and that leads on to something else is important. That health isn't just your physique. It's it's multifaceted. It's your social health, your physical health, your psychological health, your educational health, etc. So I'm very much about balance. Obviously, it's very different maintaining to getting somewhere. So in terms of to get to where you want to be, there might have to be slightly more sacrifices per se than for instance, like maintaining, you get away with a bit more. But it's just incorporating over. I mean, I've been doing it for a long time now. I've been modeling for a long time, where my sort of focus has been on aesthetics rather than performance. And it's just sort of, it's skin in the game. It's time understanding my body. It's understanding what foods sort of work for me. It's understanding what foods keep me sort of on the narrow. I genuinely enjoy everything that I eat. And I think that is just crucial, because otherwise, again, like we've already spoke about, there's an end point. So it's just taking the time to really understand your nutrition, make sure that everything sort of, you're consuming the right amounts of foods in the right portion sizes, the right type of foods and foods that you enjoy and that you're willing to sort of eat daily.
Yeah, I mean, a topic that I'm really interested in, I'd love to know your thoughts on it, is the whole calories discussion.
Yep.
Where do you sit with calories? Do you use calorie counting as a part of your coaching with your clients and with the way that you look at your own day-to-day meal plan, or do you think calories are a bit of a red herring and overemphasized in the media, etc.?
So, I mean, it's a bit of a rabbit hole. At the end of the day, the science behind it is just completely true. Like, it's calories in versus calories out in terms of body composition.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot more to calories, if you like, than just weight loss. Like, the quality of calories that you're putting into your body is so important. Mm-hmm. And I believe that everybody should create themselves a foundation of good quality, nutritious food. So everybody's base intake should be based around sort of nutritious food, and then be topped up with sort of the food that you like, whether it's then less optimal, whether it's less nutritious foods. But the science behind it's correct. If you're in a calorie deficit, you will lose weight, and if you're in a calorie surplus, you will gain weight. Like that is science, and that's not going to change. But then there's so much more to it than obviously just sort of body composition in terms of health. the quality of the nutrients you're getting in your body. Moving on to, say, skin, hair, gut health, mood, energy, hunger. I mean, there are so many different facets to it to get right.
Yeah.
And sort of going back and answering your question about how we do it sort of to clients at EatLookFeel, is that we actually provide a meal plan that kind of gives them the option. So I do provide calorie intake because I think it's very important. And I think there's a lot of value in understanding sort of where your calorie intake should be to optimize things for yourself. But then I also provide sort of lots of different meal options per meal timing per day. So you can actually just follow the meal program without having to even read about a calorie if that sort of suits your style.
Interesting. And you mentioned gut health there, which is a topic that I'm really interested in at the moment. And the whole sort of microbiome of the gut. And actually, I've talked before on the podcast about the interplay between the gut and the brain and the gut-brain axis and how they call the gut the second brain, which is really interesting from a mental health point of view. We can talk about that later on. But from a nutritional point of view and how people process food and how that leads to the outcomes that I guess they're going to use to try and achieve, how important is gut health, and how do you help your clients with their gut health? Prebiotics, probiotics. It's a bit of a minefield for me. I'm not taking any bacterial supplementation at the moment, although I supplement other things. But I'd love to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like you say, the importance of gut health is something that I believe is very sort of, it's not spoken enough about. But the education is improving, which is obviously really, really exciting. I'm sure you've seen just in terms of like kombucha and kefir, it's all sort of growing with time, and people are starting to look after their gut. And it's that link, as you mentioned, between your gut and your brain is so closely linked. And then there's the link to mental health. But yeah, looking after the gut is so important. And again, it kind of it completely depends on the sort of the level of client that we're working with. The general population, if you like, the focus should be on just consuming a nutritious sort of foundation diet, and then the gut health will improve naturally. Just moving away from sort of processed foods, from refined sugars a lot, the gut health will naturally improve. And you know, that's where again, without sort of going down too much of a rabbit hole, it's very much like a lot of people, it's getting the foundations right. It's getting the absolute basics right first before you start incorporating your kombucha a day. You know, if you're consuming a lot of processed foods and refined sugars, but then having a kombucha, that's not how it works. It's exactly. It's, you know, get the absolute basics right first. You know, make sure you're getting enough fiber, make sure you're getting your vitamins in through your nutrition, 5 to 10 sort of helpings of fruit and veg a day. Get all the basics right, and then, you know, then if there's a problem, we can then focus on the sort of the 1%, if you like, is what I call it.
Yeah, absolutely. But for you, do you just try and eat a diverse diet, eat things like kimchi or kefir or drink kombucha to get that optimal gut health? Because I guess you're all about the 1%, right? For your own performance. So I'd be interested to know if you supplement those things yourself.
I actually don't supplement. I believe that I can get enough sort of goodness in terms of gut health. Mm-hmm. I actually, I think my staple diet is sort of good enough and solid enough that I have never sort of had a problem with digestion or gut health. If I'm out and about, I'll grab a kombucha. I do like kombucha. I think it all kind of helps and all adds to, say, like your health paradigm, if you like. Yeah. But it's not something that I particularly sort of focus on daily. And to be honest, a lot of the kombucha out there, it's so sort of tiny, the difference that it can really make. Yeah. Like the amount of actual sort of microbiomes in the kombucha isn't going to change too much.
Do you have any brands? Because I love kombucha, but I'm fully on board with it's like CBD. It's like just throw a tiny percentage in, and then you can market it as that. But are there any kombucha brands that you actually rate?
To be honest, I kind of cycle between a few. Like I think Lost Bros is one that I have quite a lot in London.
Right.
To be honest, I look for the lowest sugar ones, so
Right.
the lowest calorie ones, because a lot of them are sweetened with a lot of sugar, which is something to obviously be quite careful of.
Yeah.
Because although then you're getting your microbiomes and your prebiotics, if you like, you're also getting a lot of like excess sugar to make it taste like exactly. And it's getting that balance right. So I usually just go for the lowest calorie or the lowest sort of added sugar option.
Okay, cool. And you mentioned there, you sort of caveated that you don't supplement in gut health. Do you supplement in other areas of your nutritional plan?
So I take vitamin D, which I think is just essential for everybody in the UK. There isn't anybody that I think shouldn't be taking it.
Agreed.
Just because of like the lack of sunlight that we get. I also supplement turmeric just for its anti-inflammatory properties. I take zinc and magnesium, which I find helps me sort of down-regulate with sleep at night as well. And other than that, that's all I take.
And is the zinc and magnesium, is that one tablet, or are you taking zinc and magnesium?
Yeah, that's one tablet.
Separate?
Yeah.
And which brand? Do you know which brand you use for that?
That is, I think I've just got the Holland and Barrett one at the moment.
Okay,
yeah.
Fine.
I'm not big on sort of like specific brands. I think if you look at the sort of ingredients, they're pretty similar across the board. So
okay,
like vitamin D is a vitamin D.
Yeah. Okay, wicked. So you obviously have this diploma in nutrition, so I'm gonna really dig into you on some of these specifics on food, because me and my wife have a bit of a debate over, does fat make you fat? And I don't think it does, personally. I think good fats don't make you fat. She doesn't agree with me. So where do you lie on this? Do you recommend your patients, for example, who are trying to lose weight, have an avocado or two a day? Like, where do you fit on that? Because it's obviously quite calorific, right? But it's, yeah.
Completely, and that's where the line is. It's getting the balance right, a bit like we spoke about. So, fats play such an important role in any nutritional strategy. And that's why a balanced approach is best, in my opinion. Fats control your blood sugar levels. Fats control like a big part of hormones as well, which obviously then plays a big part in hunger and mood, which can lead to adherence to any sort of nutritional strategy. So fats are essential. Obviously, then it goes a little bit deeper into the type of fats. Like, you want to be shooting for monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats, and you want to be staying away from saturated and trans fats where you can. And then a bit like what you've just sort of slightly mentioned is fats are very easy to overconsume because obviously they are quite satiating foods. So, you can eat a lot of avocado. So it's a bang for its buck calorie wise. So it's just, and again, it's a lot about portion control. But fats are an essential part to any diet, in my opinion. I think like low fat diets, for instance, they end quite badly, and it's usually with sort of hormone imbalances and that sort of thing.
Brilliant. So, what are your top three, and pardon this term, hack meals, but meals that are super simple but healthy, delicious, fill people up? The ones that you think, okay, this is a really easy one that we can implement into the diet. It's going to be brilliant for their health, but they're also going to be filled up and not reaching for the snack drawer.
Well, I mean, so one thing I think is important is to include, like, every meal you have should include some form of fruit or vegetables. So it's important that keeps you full, and also a protein source. So yeah, a protein source as well, right? So protein is going to completely regulate your hunger, your hormones. So it's important to shoot for every meal to build around a protein source and then a fruit or vegetable sort of a micronutrient, if you like, intake. I personally, one that I use and that I sort of incorporate with a lot of my clients is that I have what I like to call a dessert bowl every night. And that I have a very sweet tooth in terms of adherence wise, and it just keeps me on track, if you like. So an example of it is it's a bit of Greek yogurt. I mix a bit of protein powder in with it. I add a bit of banana. I add a bit of dark chocolate. I add a bit of peanut butter, and I add a bit of cereal. And And I'm well aware that that's probably not optimal, eating that at say 9 o'clock at night for me. In terms of if it was for a complete sort of aesthetic goal, I appreciate it's probably not completely optimal eating one that late at night and two eating, chocolate and peanut butter and cereal. But for me, it's something that keeps me on track and it keeps me that adherence and it satisfies my sweet tooth and it stops me from binging. So it's weighing it up and it's using those little hacks in your favor to create a strategy that you can stick to, because consistency is everything when it comes to sort of nutrition and strategies. And we all like to we can all sort of, one of the biggest problems that I see is counting calories and consuming a really good intake, say Monday to Friday, and then weekends it all goes badly, etc. So it's about incorporating and keeping those foods that you enjoy, keeping foods that you turn to stop that, say, the big binges come in, or the sort of the derailing, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. So what has anything changed in your mindset around nutrition and what you recommend to your clients recently? Are there any dogmas that you've prescribed to previously that you've seen you research in, or that you've just found through your own clients even, modification to that has started working better for you?
I guess the only one that I can really sort of vouch for and answer for is that I actually stopped eating meat about 18 months ago.
Oh, wow.
Which a lot of people sort of find quite surprising. So I now personally don't eat, saying that, I don't cook myself and buy myself meat. If I'm sort of out and about and I get served white meat, or in a social situation, I will eat it. I won't sort of say no, but I haven't touched red meat for about 18 months. To be honest, it was kind of a conscious decision, a mixture of my views on the kind of farming industry and that sort of thing these days, and sort of the hormones and steroids that are potentially used in meat, and also a mix of sort of from an ethical point of view. But that's something that I've done personally for the last 18 months. And I've actually, interestingly, seen a big switch in sort of clients that are keen to try a sort of more pescatarian or meat-free diet, if you like, looking sort of more towards plant-based, which is interesting.
And have you noticed any change in mental health, in physical health, in physical expression after making that change?
It's a difficult one, because obviously it's kind of like everything you do adds to that sort of paradigm, right? So it's difficult to sort of identify one thing that is particularly working well or not working well, because I believe your health is such a culmination of everything that you do. But I think I feel less sluggish. I really do. I mean, I like to think that I feel sort of probably the best I've ever felt in terms of like skin, sort of myself, my mood, my energy. And like I say, whether that's down to sort of the move away from meat, or whether it's down to just kind of like my health paradigm improving over time, and you're constantly making, even subconsciously, you're constantly making little changes to sort of, as I call it, your health paradigm. I don't know, but from my personal, I don't have, if one of my clients comes and speaks to me and says, I'd like to go meat free, I don't say, I don't think that's a good idea at all. I think definitely give it a go. Just sort of making those changes towards plant-based, and then you're already incorporating many more micros into your diet is a good thing for everybody, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm very conscious about where the sourcing of my meat. I am still a omnivore.
Yeah.
But I'm very, I buy my meat from the local farm shop, for example, all locally sourced and grass-fed and that sort of thing. But I'd like to go more plant-based. Where I've struggled with it in the past, and I tried to be a weekday vegan for a while, was maintaining whole food sort of philosophy, whilst not having that standard protein source that you would normally have as a whole food, if you know what I mean. Do you have any ingredients that you lean on or lean towards that have filled that void, I guess, on the plate where the meat was previously? Or do you use meat substitutes like this or Beyond Meats or whatever the brands are?
Yeah, so I actually still consume fish. So that's where a lot of my protein comes from. And obviously, the big thing you lose when you consume meat, the big thing you lose is your lean protein sources. So like for instance, a chicken, turkey, it's all very lean. You're just getting protein with those sort of foods. Whereas when you move towards a plant-based diet, particularly vegan, you lose that. You don't really have your, say, lean protein sources. It all comes with your legumes, your beans, your tofu. Say it all comes with either, it's all it can be high in protein, but it comes with carbohydrate or it comes with fat. So I think a high protein vegan diet is completely possible. Like it just takes a lot more planning, and it takes a lot more sort of understanding your diet and planning ahead. You also need to make sure you're eating enough. A lot of vegan food is very satiating, very filling. So you need to make sure you need to put the time in. It's not an easy just switch. Oh, I'm going to go vegan. In my experience, I've found a lot of people then underconsume and don't get enough protein because if you just switch a meal, sort of a say omnivore meal for a vegan meal, automatically you're consuming the same amount of food but for much less of a calorie intake, and therefore your hunger levels and your kind of intake's lower, but your hunger's still sort of where it is, and then that can lead to malnutrition and stuff. So it does take time. And it does take a real understanding of using, but nowadays there's so many alternatives out there in terms of seitan, tofu. Like you can get veggie. I mean, you go into supermarkets nowadays, and even in just the last 10 years, it's changed completely. It's got its own aisles now for vegan substitutes.
What's seitan? Sorry, I haven't heard of seitan before.
Seitan, so it's probably the leanest, say, vegan protein source you can get. It's spelled Seitan, and it's completely vegan. I believe it's made from soybean, and it is it's plant based, and it's probably the leanest, highest protein sort of intake you can get.
Tasty?
Depends how you cook it.
Needs some heavy seasoning, I guess.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, you can create some incredible vegan meals. Like it's a lot about it's just prepping it and understanding it and what you're pairing it with, that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. Okay, well, let's move on to look. Let's move on to your training regime. I've seen some of the gear that you've got in your new at-home gym. Is that at your house? That gym that you've built? It looks pretty special.
It is, it's kind of separate. It's separate. It's slightly separate, but it's in the same sort of area,
vicinity.
Which is nice. Yeah, it's been good. Yeah, exactly.
So, what's your personal, and obviously, go into as much detail as you want here, but from a day-to-day routine point of view, where do you fit fitness into your daily routine? What's your frequency like? What's your duration like of the individuals, and your variety as well is always something that I'm quite interested about, how you mix up the different aspects of fitness.
Completely. So kind of like trying to answer all of those in one, per se, I'd say that I train every day looks different because of sort of the nature of the work that I have. When I'm at home, I like to train first thing. So I get up at sort of, get in the gym for 7 o'clock in the morning and just get it done nice and early. Obviously, if I'm shooting, then that has to, or traveling around, that obviously then takes a back seat. But let's take that for an example. I probably train 5 times a week properly, and then maybe one active rest day, and then I try and have one full rest day. I kind of base my personal training on a push pull lower split. So it's my push movements, then my pull movements, and then my lower body, and then just incorporate cardio in terms of all the sessions that I do are quite intense, and they do last quite a long time. I probably train for about an hour and a half a day. I have quite a high sort of adherence level to training for quite a long time. I guess that's just kind of a product of training for such a long time. But the way I sort of base every session in terms of program it is I start off with a little heart raiser in terms of a warm through, usually some mobility drills, get the heart rate up, get the blood flowing a little bit, usually targeted to the area that I'm training. Then I usually go into some strength work. So base it around my compound lifts. So my push, pull, carry, squat, hinge. that's where those movements get incorporated. Then I usually do a bit of accessory work, all broken up into sort of supersets, quite intense, sort of almost circuit-based type work. And then I finish off usually with what I call a finisher, which is usually like a high intensity, really get sort of the blood flowing, heart rate right up, which is usually a sort of, say, 10 to 15 minute circuit based, again, usually targeted to the area that I've been training that day, just designed to really sort of have a sweat out at the end. And I find that kind of works for me in terms of keeping me lean, in terms of maintaining, and also brings me enjoyment, which I think is really important to sort of, again, just in the same way that it works with a sort of nutritional strategy, you have to enjoy what you're doing to be able to keep it up for a long period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you just put a Peloton into the gym there as well, didn't you?
Yes. I see you've got one also.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I'll need to follow you on there. It's a great addition to the. I love mixing it in with my strength training. To be honest, it really gets the heart rate going, doesn't it?
Completely, yeah. It is really, really good bit of kit, and I love how they've got the shorter classes as well.
Yeah.
So you've got your 20-minute classes, so you can, like you say, you can either piece that onto as a warm up or piece it onto the end of a session. It's definitely very valuable. Yeah.
Absolutely, brilliant. So, sorry if I'm pushing you to like try and give us some real little nuggets here for the listeners, but do you have any exercises? Especially bodyweight exercises, I think, because they're ones that people can just do anywhere. But do you have any exercises that give maximum output in the shortest amount of time from what you've seen from your clients?
That's a difficult one because they're all kind of well known, and well known for a reason. And this is something that I speak to my clients a lot about as well. Is that these core sort of movements, if you like, and movement patterns are well known and important for a reason, and that's because they are the best. And I think there's almost a bit of a sort of movement, if you like, where people are sort of trying to create new exercises or come up with cool alternatives that can really, that look fancy for, say, social media and that sort of thing, when really it's actually, these core principles of push, pull, squat, hinge, carry. Every program, I believe, should be built around those sort of core movements. So it's for your body weight stuff, you don't want to be going too much sort of away from a push up. Get really, really good at a push up. And it sounds ridiculous, but and because people want to jump around and do sort of lots of, whether it's like burpees into a tuck jump or something like that, and it's actually just get really, really good at the core principle movements.
Yeah.
And it might sound boring, but it's where the value is, and it's boring for a reason, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I've actually been working on Joe Wicks inspired me to try and increase the number of press ups that I could do, not for any other reason, just than to have a challenge to target. So I've been trying to do press ups daily, and just see how many I can push out in one set with good form.
How are you getting on?
Yeah, I've added about 5 so far. I've only been doing it for about 3 weeks.
Amazing.
But I'm up to a bounce of 35 in a single session.
Good man.
Which it seems to work pretty well. But it's
definitely.
I've always struggled with putting mass to any part of my limbs, to be honest, 'cause I'm so tall. It's quite a difficult thing. So anything that helps with that
pain,
yeah, you're a tall lad as well, aren't you? So I've got no excuse, basically.
Don't know about that, but no, definitely it's focus on the core movements. Like get really, really good at squatting, get really, really good at pushing in terms of push-ups, pull-ups if you've got access to that, hinging, so deadlift, and then work around all the sort of fun accessory work in around those core movement principles.
So you have obviously a professional PT qualification. I know that was really important to you before starting the program, is to get the sort of the real data behind these things. What exercises do you see most often incorrectly trained or promoted online? Are there specific things that you just cringe at and you think, oh, that's just completely wrong, that you see most commonly done wrong? Like I imagine crunches. Like I always think any ab work I'm doing wrong. I always find it very difficult to get the form right on those sort of things. But do you see that quite a lot?
Yeah, completely. I mean, it's difficult to sort of say blanket because some people perform movements very well, and but it was an interesting story. Someone who is actually very, very close to me, who I learned a lot of, and he's probably one of the most intelligent people that I know, and one of the best sort of trainers that I know. He actually told me a long, long time ago. He was like, if you ever program somebody a burpee, you're doing something wrong.
Interesting.
And now I haven't taken that. I haven't taken that completely as never ever do a burpee, because there are really good ways to perform a burpee, and you can perform a burpee properly. But it was really interesting, and he was just like, 90% of the people, 95% of people perform burpees with incorrect form, and it's a very popular movement because obviously it's easy to just get the to get your heart rate up quite quickly. Um, but actually, you're far better off, instead of doing 10 burpees, do 10 body weight squats and then 10 press ups. And that kind of stuck with me because it's actually the hinge part of the burpee that gives a lot of people lower back pain. When not performed correctly. There are obviously correct ways to perform a burpee, but that's probably one of the biggest, say, mistakes that I see, and also, like you say, crunches as well. Everybody kind of believes that to get a six pack or to get abs, it's all about crunches. Again, a lot of people perform crunches very wrong and put a lot of sort of unnecessary stress onto the lower back. And it's actually things like planks, that are weight and rollouts and working on that transverse abdominis instead of your rectus abdominis that are actually going to bring on probably the abs and the torso that you're sort of shooting for.
Didn't know that about burpees. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it is an interesting one.
Cool. Okay, let's move on to feel then. So I'm obsessed with mindset. I love talking about mental health and any sort of routines or tools to improve that. Do you how do you build your mindset thoughtfully into your own life and into your client's life? Do you have a routine that you build it into each day, or how does it work for you?
So I obviously have my own routines that I believe work for me. It's a very personal thing, mindset, and it sort of depends on what your goals are as well, and how you kind of want to focus on sort of taking things. But I think everyone can benefit from having the sort of underlying motivation to become better, and that isn't just in terms of body composition wise. That isn't just whether it's weight loss or weight gain. It's everything, and like I said, a bit like I mentioned sort of briefly earlier, health is so multifaceted. It's not just sort of body composition and weight. It's your social health, your economic health, your educational health, and just having that underlying sort of better and that 1% compounding sort of improvements every single day. I think it's just such a powerful mindset to be in for everybody.
Yeah, completely. I always think people oftentimes want that immediate output from any activity that they put in. And the things that I found to have the most value in my life are actually, as you say, the compounding benefits of forcing yourself to go to this event that you don't really want to go to, but then you network with someone and then you see them again, and then all these things sort of grow and you learn something from them. And it's very much the mindset I've got with my startup is I go into it thinking, right, even if this fails, oftentimes if a startup had failed and you'd invested a lot of time and money into it, you might think that had been a complete waste of time. But actually, I've improved, I've learned so many new skills, I've met so many new people, and it may be that actually that's not the end point goal. You hang a right and then you end up in a completely different location. It's interesting how life goes completely that way.
But the value you'd have received from doing that, even subconsciously, we learn things even without realizing how, just having that mentality to improve, good things start happening, right?
Absolutely. Well, I'm trying to absorb as much information from all of the guests on this podcast, and it's certainly been. We're about 12 episodes in now, and it's been. I've learned an incredible amount from everyone. It's been really interesting. So, do you do much in the way of meditation or anything of that sort, or do you let exercise be your your quiet time for personal growth?
To be honest, that is one thing that I probably do want to include more of is meditation and that sort of thing. I have a very overactive brain. I think everything through a lot. I'm constantly thinking. I'm constantly sort of processing things in my head. That I think meditation would be very sort of beneficial. And it's one of those things, meditation, that you never speak to someone who meditates who says a bad word about it. It seems to be a lot of upside and not a lot of downside, but it's difficult to incorporate. So I mean, that is something that I am actively trying to improve. But I guess kind of my exercise works for me at, like you say, that it's very sort of closely linked. I mean, I like training on my own. I very much like switching off. I like getting in there. I like my own space. I like doing it early in the morning when you kind of have that weird sort of sensation that everybody else is asleep. And you're kind of getting it done before the world's up, if you like. I've always liked that, and I kind of think things through in that time and come up with. I've actually got a notepad and pen in the new gym that we've got here, and I now just make notes as I train, and that's got nothing to do with training. That's, you know, eat, look, feel stuff, or stuff that I need to do that day, or like that sort of thing. And I just find that that's when a lot of ideas come to me, just when I'm sort of in the gym. So I guess that kind of ties into a form of meditating, in terms of just switching off and sort of doing your own thing.
I have exactly the same thing, and the problem is I tend to be on the Peloton for sort of a 45-minute ride or something, and I've told myself I'm not allowed to touch my phone when I'm on the Peloton, so that I don't just like grab the phone and check Instagram or check my Shopify sales from the startup or something like that. But I completely agree. It's torture, because I have all my best ideas around sort of 15 minutes into a cardio workout, and then suddenly my brain just starts firing off with these really great ideas for the podcast or for the business, or, as you say, things that you've got to do and that sort of thing. So it's a really interesting, from a brain point of view, the physiology behind what's going on there.
Completely, yeah. And like I say, I get so much value from that, and come up with some of my like best ideas, if you like, from that, say, hour in the gym that I have in the morning. I was actually speaking to one of my friends quite recently about it, and he's just bought, believe it or not, you can get nowadays a waterproof pen and paper for the shower, because he was having so many good ideas in the shower that he's now got that in his shower. I mean, I have no idea how that works, but apparently, he's got a notepad and a pen in his shower for his ideas.
Brilliant. No, I have heard there's a really famous director who actually built a shower into his writing studio, and he would take like 15 showers a day, because every shower he would have his best ideas.
There you go. Maybe I think that's all sort of weirdly intrinsically linked, right? There's something about, say, switching off, or a happy place, or a sort of, you get into a mindset of just things start flowing.
Yeah, interesting. More showers is clearly the answer. I'm actually, now we've said this, I'm going to hang a notepad and pen off my Peloton bike so that I can allow myself to write these notes down.
Honestly, buy a whiteboard and literally just jot anything down, and it's so valuable. Yeah, like I've come up with, I mean, to be fair, there's a lot of bad ideas that get thrown about, don't get me wrong.
Yeah. You suddenly think you're a superhero.
Some definite value in there. Yeah, literally. And an hour later, you can't even read your writing. You know, I don't understand what that says, but it's just part of it, right?
Talking about showers, I'd be interested to know if you've incorporated, there's just such a massive trend around cold therapy at the moment. And building cold showers and ice baths and swimming in the English Channel in the middle of winter. Is that something that you prescribe to in any way, either from a physical point of view or from a mental point of view?
So I have dabbled in the past. I have done sort of various ice baths over the years, and I believe there's a lot of value in them, even just from like a mentality point of view. Obviously, it's very difficult to do in the UK in the wintertime, because you can kind of have a cold shower and then not really warm up for the rest of the day, which obviously I don't prescribe. But in the summer, it is something that I did. I used to just, to be honest, what I used to do is have a normal shower and then end it with like 30 seconds of cold. And And I do think there's a lot of value in it. I really do. I'm not an expert in terms of the like science behind it and the muscular. I think it's the sort of thing you need to do a lot to sort of
See the benefits.
see the recovery. Yeah, so see the recovery benefits is something that you probably need to implement daily. And also, we're talking again at the top level, right? So, if you're doing stuff like Will does with the crazy running, or there probably are benefits, but the day-to-day person who's training, I believe the benefits are probably more from a mindset point of view. So it's creating that almost challenge for yourself, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. Do something that scares you every day. It's definitely a true philosophy.
Completely, that's it. It's comfort zone, right? It's just stepping out of your comfort zone for 30 seconds and challenging yourself and sort of giving yourself that mentality to sort of, be uncomfortable, get comfortable being uncomfortable, if you like.
Yeah, and I've definitely, I think I've dabbled in it and to the same extent that you have, and it's a battle mentally at the tap. You got your hand on the temperature
Very
knob,
much so.
and and you're like, oh, I'm so comfortable in this warm shower. I really don't want to do this.
Yeah, well, that's it. And like I remember I used to tell my little brother and try and get him on board. And he's literally just like, why would I do that? I couldn't think of anything worse. I'm having a lovely warm shower. Why would I make it cold? Like you're crazy. Like he's 18, he doesn't understand. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, he'll get there.
At that age, you just want a warm shower in and out. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Okay, wicked. Let's crack into a little bit of rapid fire to round up here. Just 4 rapid fire questions, and then one question that we asked all of our guests at the end. So onto the rapid fire. What is your? If you can only choose one, but if you could choose one exercise, and it's the only one you're allowed to do for the rest of your life, which one would it be?
Bang for the buck, I guess you'd have to choose a deadlift.
Really interesting.
I think so. Yeah, just incorporating everything. One exercise, you'd have to choose a squat or a deadlift. Deadlift. I'm going to go.
Okay, brilliant. What are you most grateful for right now?
Good question. What am I most grateful for? Probably the people around me, to be honest. And I think lockdown for me has really highlighted that. I'm so fortunate to have sort of the support circle or inner circle, whatever you call it, and just generally the people around me that I do. I sort of get unlimited support in terms of everything sort of that I sort of want to do, and I'm very, very fortunate for that. I have very good people around me, which has been sort of highlighted in the last year. Absolutely,
yeah. I found that I've really lent into the people that I'm closest to. I almost want a small circle now, so that I can really spend the time nurturing those relationships.
Completely, and like I've always had quite a small circle, and I've always been grateful and know that I've had a small circle. But I think when things like this happen, and you just really do double down on the gratitude towards them.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your favourite podcast or audiobook if you're not a podcast guy?
My favourite audiobook is Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've read it.
I actually haven't, but I've been recommended that a number of times.
I honestly, genuinely believe it's a must read for everybody. It's a brilliant book. There's so many takeaways. And podcast wise, I listen to Modern Wisdom a lot, which is Chris Williamson.
Okay.
He has some incredible guests on there. It's very much the sort of self-development type vibe. But yeah, he has some really, really good guests on there now, and I really like the sort of mentality and what he's doing with it.
Brilliant. I haven't listened to that one, so I'll definitely check that out.
Yeah, I can send you some good ones.
And then final question of the rapid fire, who is your biggest inspiration in life? And this can be an idol, a celebrity, someone that you look up to, or even someone much closer to home.
Cool. Who is my biggest inspiration? I mean, it's difficult because you take inspirations from everywhere, right? And going through life, but I'd probably say my old man is my biggest inspiration. And that's not in terms of like training or fitness wise or anything like that. Just as a person, this is the nicest man that anyone's ever met. And one of them people that you've never you've never heard anyone say a bad word about him. Everybody that's ever met him is in love with him, and I think that's such a powerful sort of place to be in life, and it's something that everybody can look up to.
Absolutely. Well, there's that Maya Angelou quote, isn't there, that they'll forget what you've done, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. So that's got to be one of the most important things.
That's perfectly put. Yeah, completely.
Brilliant. So last question, which is the one that we ask for every guest on the show. What's the one small change that you've made in your life that you wish you made earlier on?
Good question. I'd probably say that it's the sort of just start mentality, which is something that I kind of have sort of been sort of reading about and learning about a lot, and something that I've now started incorporating myself is that just I feel like when you're a bit of a perfectionist, it's easy to sort of put things off and procrastinate and try and really focus on, creating something perfect before you put it out there. And then there's sort of like imposter syndrome and the Dunning-Kruger effect, all of those sort of things that add up to that. And I think it's really important concept to just get going sometimes and just get moving and learn as you go and adapt as you go. And it's a little bit like the quote, the famous quote that says, like, and I'm sure you can relate to this sort of really well, is that the first podcast you do, it's going to be rubbish, but 100th podcast you do, it's completely different, right? And there's only one way to get there, and that's by just starting. And I think for my life, especially over the last, say, 2 or 3 years, I've had these ideas and stuff, but I've always kind of wanted to create perfection, if you like, before I put things out there and before I sort of really get going with it. And I think actually the best way to learn sometimes is just throw yourself in at the deep end and, like I say, just start and then sort of adapt as you go and make the relevant sort of changes you need to as you move.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that, and it's certainly, the podcast is a prime example of that. And I remember hearing Tim, before I started the podcast, I remember hearing Tim Ferriss say, who's one of my favourite podcasters, he's done 500 now, I think, had everyone on there, from Hugh Jackman to every Kevin Hart and The Rock, and so many massive names. But I remember him talking about his first episode and how awful it was, and laughing with a friend about it. And you always think everyone else knows what they're doing more than you do. But I always love going back to the thought that everyone starts at zero, like especially in a social media world where everything is analysed on vanity metrics of followers and that sort of stuff. Every single person has started on zero, and you have to start with that minimum viable product, to use a sort of a startup term. And I'm the same as you. I'm a complete perfectionist, and I really struggle with this with Parla, my toothpaste brand, that I wanted everything to be absolutely perfect before we got out the door. But actually, thankfully, my founders pushed me out earlier than I would have gone. And we've iterated since then, and we've modified, and we've moved, and we've grown, and we're now so much further ahead than we would have been. I probably wouldn't have even launched a product yet.
That's it, exactly. It's so powerful, and even in the fitness space as well, like with clients, like it's just getting going. Like your first workout's gonna be difficult, and it's probably you're not going to be where you want it to be, but in your 100th workout, you're going to be a lot stronger than where you started. You're going to be a lot better technique wise than where you started, and the only way to get to number 100 is by doing number 1. And it's that power in just get going sometimes. Yeah,
absolutely. Brilliant. Well, Dan, thank you so much for your time. It's been a really, really interesting chat. Where can people find you? What are your handles on social media and stuff if they want to follow you or follow the EatLookFeel?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you so much for having me. I do really, really appreciate it. So my personal Instagram, which is just where I kind of post my own type stuff, is Dan_Hyman. And then if for sort of coaching is at EatLookFeel.com. We also run a weekly newsletter with some sort of nice actionable takeaways sort of around nutrition, training and mindset. So I'd recommend signing up to that. And then at eat.look.feel on Instagram as well. That's kind of where you'll get the more value side of things in terms of social posts.
Brilliant. Well, thanks so much, mate. I'll catch up with you soon, and have a great day.
Top man. Thank you so much, Simon. I appreciate it.